Welcome, Rick, Visaka, Julie. How's audio? How's video? How's internet connection, etc.? Hello, Dows. Hello, Jay. Well, I mean, so far this new year, I'm still alive, so I guess that's good, right? So far, New Year hasn't been too bad. Hello, Karuna. Welcome. Yes, for the first time in a long time when I stream, I actually have a proper Buddha Rupa behind me, right? At the Indonesian Buddhist Vihara here in Queens. Hello, Jayantha. Welcome. Oh, did I say hello to Douse? No, now I did. Hey, Douse. All right, we'll give it a few minutes as we usually do for people to come in. Good to see you're all still alive in this new year. It's been a week. Abby and Isla, hello. We'll get started in about a minute or so. Hello, Louisa. Karina says barely. Barely what? That we're barely alive? Hello, Dharma learner. Welcome. Oh, Gregory, welcome. Nice altar. Yeah, it does seem proper that a monk should have a nice altar behind him, right? It seems like the proper thing for a live stream. Unless you're in the wilderness, then it's a different story. You look at the early days when I was at Bhavana, when I would make videos for the YouTube channel, it was all in the woods. All right, I think we can get started. Share screen. I think we should do Mahamangala Sutta today. Someone push you to the platform edge. Yeah, you got to be careful. I mean, I've seen way too many videos of people literally pushing people off into the subway tracks. It's quite, whenever I'm in the subway, I'm all like this. Well, I'm always all like this anyway. I'm always very aware of what's happening around me. But yeah, when I wait for a subway, I don't wait anywhere near the tracks. I'm quite far from the yellow line. So I'm happy that you weren't fully pushed over into the tracks. Holy moly. Hello, Yankee. Welcome. All right. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Evang me sutang ekang samayang bhagava savattiyang viharati jetavane yanata pindakassa arame atako anyattara devata abhikantaya rattiya abhikantavanna kevalakappang jetavannang ubhasetva yena bhagavaten uppasankami Upasankamitva bhagavantang abhivaditva ekamantang attasi ekamantang titakosa devata bhagavantang gattaya jabasi. Bahudeva manusa cha mangalani chintayung akankamana suttanang bruhi mangalam uttamang asevana cha balanang panditanyang cha sevana pujya cha pujaniyanang evang mangalam uttamang patirupa desavaso cha pubbe cha katapunyata attasamma panidhi cha etang mangalam uttamang Bahu Sachancha Sipancha Vinayo Cha Susikito Subhasitta Chaya Vacha Etang Mangalam Uttamang Mata Pitu Upattanang Puttadarasa Sangaho Anakula Chakamanta Etang Mangalam Uttamang Danang cha Dhammacharya cha Nyatikanyang cha Sangamo Sangaho Anavajjani kammani etang mangalam uttamang arati virati papa panchapanya cha sanyamo appamado chadamesu etang mangalam uttamang garavo cha nivato cha santutti chatkat achakatanyuta kalena dhamma savanang etang mangalam uttamang kanti cha sova chassata Samananyang cha dasanang kalena dhammasakkacha etang mangalam uttamang tapo cha brahmacharya cha arya satchana dasanang nibbana satchikiriya cha etang mangalam uttamang puttassa lokadamehi chittang yassana kampati asokang virajang kemang etang mangalam uttamang Etadisani katvana sabbatang aparajita sabbata sotingachanti tangte sang mangalam uttamanti etena satchavajena hotam he jaya mangalam. All right, English. The Great Discourse on Blessings. Oh, hello, David C. Welcome. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Sublime One was living near Savatthi, at Jeta's Grove, in the park of Anathapindika. Then, in the middle of the night, a certain deity of astounding beauty, lighting up the entire Jeta's Grove, approached the Sublime One. Drawing near, she paid homage to the Sublime One and stood to one side. Standing thus, the deity addressed the Sublime One in verse. Many deities and humans have pondered on blessings, desiring their well-being. Tell me the blessing supreme. To associate not with the foolish, to be with the wise, to honor the worthy ones, this is a blessing supreme. To reside in a suitable location, to have good past deeds done, to set oneself in the right direction, this is a blessing supreme. Great learning and craft, and a discipline well trained in, and whatever utterance is well spoken. This is a blessing supreme. To be well caring of mother or father, looking after spouse and children, to engage in a harmless occupation. This is a blessing supreme. Selfless giving, living the just life, supporting all relatives in blameless action. This is a blessing supreme. To cease and abstain from evil, complete restraint from intoxicants, to be diligent in virtuous practices. This is a blessing supreme. To be reverent and humble, content and grateful, to hear the Dhamma at the right time. This is a blessing supreme. To be patient and obedient, the seeing of recluses, to discuss the Dhamma at the right time. This is a blessing supreme. To live austerely and purely, to see the noble truths, and to realize Nibbana. This is a blessing supreme. A mind unshaken when touched by the worldly states, sorrowless, stainless, and secure. This is a blessing supreme. Those who have fulfilled all these are everywhere invincible. They find well-being everywhere. Theirs is the blessing supreme. By the power of this truth, may joyous victory be ours. This is the key. This is the key to this sutta. Those who have fulfilled all these are everywhere invincible. This is not necessarily when we think of blessings, we often think of something that has happened to us that maybe we had nothing to do with. But these are all things to be fulfilled. These are all actions. And then we have gratitude, and understand that they are blessings once we have set these all these different blessings as conditions of our life. So those who have fulfilled all of these are everywhere invincible. That's a great goal. It's a very goal to work towards. Very good goal. All right. Okay, friends. It is Monday night. That means it's time for another Festival of Dhamma with the Maggasekha community. It's time for Dhammapalooza. As always, Dhammapalooza is a community-guided event. We don't know how this Dhammapalooza will turn out. Maybe there'll be just questions and answers. Maybe there'll be no questions and we'll read suttas. Maybe somebody has a question or a topic they'd like me to talk about, right? We will see how Dhammapalooza shapes up tonight. So for the next couple of minutes, if you have any questions you'd like me to answer, you can put them in the chat. If you have any topics you'd like me to give a Dhamma talk on, you can put those in the chat. Or if you have any topics that you'd like the community to discuss, you can put those in the chat. As always, I encourage you all to engage with each other in the chat, support each other, help each other out. I always appreciate when I see that in the chat, because we have to make sure that we are all good Kalyana Mittas and we're all supporting each other on our path. So I will check out the chat for a couple of minutes and see what arises. Douse, I think, has a comment, at least. Something I wanted to share, useful for me, right or wrong attitude, basically to treat seriously what deserves to be treated seriously, aka having a certain attitude. Dangers should be treated as dangers. Mara should not be treated as harmless. This is very important. Yes, without a doubt. Mara is very devious. You whenever you think you have the upper hand on Mara, Mara is hitting you from 3 other flanks. Mara is like the greatest military general in existence. Whenever you think you beat him, another head of the Hydra comes out. So yes, you should take Mara very seriously. Whether you think it's just your mind or you think you understand it as an actual being in samsara. Either way, you should take Mara very seriously. Because if you don't, and you don't stay in your domain, just like the hunter can do with the deer whatever it wants, Mara just can use you as a puppet. Like if one encounters drugs and people are like, nah, that's fine, no problem, that's not good. One should have a firm attitude. Yeah, yeah. You should understand what is important. Right? This is the Buddha says that the wise see in the essential the essential. The unwise see in the essential the unessential. Right? Because you have diluted perceptions, you don't really take seriously what needs to be taken seriously. Julie says, Dear Venerable, I still depend on chanting along with recordings. Any tips for how to chant along so it's rhythmic? Different monks seem to have each their own rhythm. Yeah, and especially so in Thailand, they're usually kind of very strict on being very harmonious in their rhythm. So like you go to a different, a Thai monastery or whatever, and they'll have a specific way that they chant things. You go to another one, and they'll have a specific way that they chant things. It really doesn't matter. I think I've even, in terms of like for Maggasekha, I've even thought about like the kind of like what rhythm or like how should I set the kind of tone. This is talking about like in the future, like when I have monks and things like that, not like right now, like when we're doing live streams. But yeah, it's not something that's really important. There are some rules for monks about how you should chant, not doing it in a sing-songy way and things like that. But for lay people, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, and in Sri Lanka, like if you ever listen to a bunch of Sri Lankan monks chant, they're all doing their own rhythm. I remember I spoke to this young Western monk who I think he was a Samanera actually, and he had just spent a couple years in Sri Lanka, and he said that he says yes, he says when all the Sri Lankan monks start chanting, it's a cacophony, but it turns us into its own symphony. But somehow they all, even though they're doing their own chantings, it all kind of turns into something like a one unity together. Yeah. So yeah, there's no real specific. If you're into one specific tradition and one specific teacher, then it probably behooves you to kind of learn how they chant. But otherwise, it doesn't really matter. One of the problems with learning something to a specific rhythm is that it really throws you for a loop when you're having to chant it in a very different rhythm, especially if it's slower or faster. Like even here at the Indonesian Vihara yesterday, the Sunday they always have a session, and we were chanting something I knew, but because they were doing it in a different rhythm and slower, I kept messing up because it was like because your mind is like just understands it in that very specific rhythm. So in some ways, it's a benefit not to get too attached to memorizing something in a specific rhythm, so you have a bit more flexibility in being able to chant it. Hello, Anthony. All right. I see some questions. I'll start working on these. I'd love to hear you talk about developing patience. This was actually the whole topic of my insight timer session on Saturday. Developing patient endurance. Just like every skill, you have to slowly build up your ability to be patient with things. One of the problems is that we don't live in line with reality. We don't think in line with reality. We don't act in line with reality. And so because of this, we cause ourselves suffering. Because of this, we don't have any patience. Patience naturally arises, naturally builds with when you develop wisdom, but it also naturally builds from doing small things like sitting in meditation, right? Enduring some itching, enduring some pain, enduring some boredom, understanding that these are not going to kill you. It's just an unpleasant feeling. Let me have some patience. Let me endure it. Patience is a very important skill to have, right? Buddha says, Kanti paramang tapotitika. Patient endurance is the best practice, the highest practice. Why is that? Well, it's because if you're patient and you're able to endure unpleasant experiences, then you're able to act or react in skillful ways, not just out of emotion, not just out of a reaction to an unpleasant experience without any thought, without any mindfulness, without any reflection, without any wisdom. So being able to patiently endure allows us to act more skillfully in the world for the benefit of yourself and others. The Buddha says, when one in dealing with somebody who is angry does not become angry themselves, wins a battle hard to win and is of benefit to themselves and to the other person as well. So developing patience is something that you start out small, you start out slow, and you build up from it. There's lots and lots of ways throughout the day that you can practice patience. I mean, maybe you're waiting in line, you're sitting in traffic, you're doing all kinds of activities where maybe you're forced to slow down when you would rather not to. Well, those are opportunities to develop patience, to just be present, just to understand what's happening, to observe your mind, what's going through your mind and dealing with these delays or this forced slowdown. It's not an easy thing to develop, but we have to develop it. And it's not something that you just start out with. You have to start small. Look for small ways that you can practice being patient and build up over time. If you're mindful, you could probably find at least 10 to 15 different opportunities during your day to practice some level of being patient. Anthony says, Buddha is training us to be a different kind of endurance athlete. Yeah. All right. Let's see. But I enjoy hearing a talk or discussion on being content and living in harmony with others with metta. With metta is a good start in doing that. um, One of the best things to do is to set your boundaries and to really minimize dealing with people who are foolish. That you have to do that. That's a first start. You just at least minimize being around foolish people as much as you can. You know, sometimes you can't, they're coworkers or your families or whatever, but minimize being around foolish people, having them impact you. Minimize that. That's a good first step. And then after that, understanding human nature and understanding, this the reality of the situation you're in. You're a being with greed, hatred, and delusion. And everybody around you is a being with greed, hatred, and delusion. And nobody's perfect. So my day is not going to be perfect. I'm going to have to deal with people I probably would rather not. Even people normally I have no problems with. Maybe today they're causing me an issue. They're bringing me agitation. But you can reflect. Well, normally this person's a good person. This is just this is happening today. It's okay. I can have metta, I can have goodwill, I can forgive, have compassion, etc. The world is the way the world is. Right? You have to understand that. And then you can kind of come to peace and contentment with it. You just let the world be how it is. It was that way before you were born, and it's going to be that way after you're dead. Nothing major is going to change, and if it does, everything changes, but it's just all going to go in the same cycles over and over again, as the Buddha tells us, right? Um, so you kind of limit your focus, right? Shift your focus to a more manageable view, a more manageable focus. Do what you can to set the groundwork so that peace and contentment and harmony are around you. Develop your wisdom and insight by developing the Noble Eightfold Path. And then that peace and contentment will arise. There's a lot of work to be done, lots of actions to take to set the groundwork for these things. So you have to, as the Buddha says so many times in the suttas, and this is not to be had by wishing, meaning that you have to work for it. You have to set the ball in motion. You have to you have to build the foundation for this to be in your life. Julie says, Mara seems to be trying to tempt me a lot these days, using many people. Mara is always there. Mara is any day, all day, especially even if you think your practice is going really well. I haven't seen Mara in a while. That's when you should really be suspicious. Wait a second. Mara hasn't tried to attack in a while. What's happening? What's going on around here? Yeah. Mara will come at you. You know, I always tell the story of, like, one example. I can remember at Bhavana, man, I was exhausted. I was malnourished. I was just tired and agitated, and you know, I would be in the evening meditation, and meditating at that time was never worked for me even in lay life, and I'm just like doing walking meditation, and my mind's like, it's okay. You worked hard. You're going through a lot. Why don't you just go back to your room? Just rest. Just enjoy the rest of the night. And I would say, no, I see you, Mara. And then I keep doing my walking meditation. And then 2 minutes later, another justification from another angle, and another from another angle if I beat that. So if I was able to keep beating these Mara's flanking maneuvers, I would stay for quite a while and meditate. But typically, Mara would get me at about maybe the third or the fourth attempt. But you know, I got to the point where I was like, in the state I'm in, if I can say no twice, that's a win. Right? Like I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. So I was like, I said, you know what? I was able to fight it at least a couple times. I was able to you know, jujitsu Mara's attacks and made it this long. That's good. And I got to try to do better next time. You always have to be wary of Mara as long as you're awake. Was driving home and saw the deer come out at dusk to avoid predators. They know their domain. I don't know. Don't most of the predators come out at night? Honestly, where I'm from in New Jersey, the deer have no predators. That's why there's more deer in New Jersey than most Western states. They're just they come out and crash into people's cars. Yeah. But yeah, that's their time, dusk and dawn. I remember one time when I was running in the morning in this park, when I would like to do just like my off path wilderness running, and I was running and I came up over a hill and I scared like 10 deer. And for about 10 seconds, I was literally running with the deer like it was some kind of Hollywood movie. It was pretty neat. It's a pretty neat experience to be running with the deer. But yeah, they know their domain. If they don't, then if there's predators, then they're done. All right. A friend asked what Buddhists think of dry January. This is the first time I've heard I've heard things about November. I've heard things about all kinds of different, like, refrain from this in this month. I've never heard of dry January. I think encouraging by implicitly encouraging drinking after January. I think that any practice, and you see this in many different religions, most religions have some period of fasting, some period of restraining. Judaism, Islam, Christianity, during in growing up Catholic, it was always during Lent. It was like, what do you give up for Lent, which is a couple months. I think this is a good practice. I really do. I think people should do this more regularly, and practice letting go of something. I think it's a very good practice. Um, you know, as a Buddhist person, a Buddhist person who's following the precepts is not drinking anyway. So their dry January is dry every year, the whole year round. But somebody can kind of practice with refraining from something. I think that's a good thing. Then maybe they can want to refrain from more and more things. Start practicing more and more letting go, more and more sense restraint. That's a good thing. I don't know about encouraging drinking after January. I mean, people are going to drink after January. That's one thing, but I don't know why you need to, like, I don't know the context of encouraging it after January. Like, this is like, okay, we're done drinking, so let's drink more now or something. Maybe you're gonna. That's pretty typical though. After like a period of going without, you kind of binge a little bit. If you practice periods of going without, when you have it again, there's a bit of a binge. So it's like, like you're kind of like at this low level, and then you come back and you jump up here, but then it kind of comes back down to, like, it like levels out eventually. So yeah, having a bit of a binge, like whenever I do a fast, like even if it's just a 24-hour fast, for some reason, like, when I finally eat, it's just like I feel like I have to eat. I have to eat more, 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 more. But it's like, no, 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 no. You even if it's a couple of days, it's like you didn't eat for a couple of days. Big deal. You can go for a month. You don't need to, go crazy just because you didn't eat for a couple of days. But that's like the mindset, right? You can observe that when you let go of something, right? You give up watching movies or TV for for a month, and then you come back and you're like binging 10 episodes in one day of whatever show or something. This is all this binging thing is a sign of the way society is going. Back in the old days, you had to wait a week for the next episode. It's like, ooh, wow, we can't wait a whole week for another episode. We have to be able to watch it all and waste our day sitting there watching 8 hours or something. Not good. But but anyway, that's a tangent I don't need to go on. Um, see, where are we at here? Joy. Okay, does one really know she has died to take rebirth? Or no. Yeah. Is there a bardo or intermediate state before one takes rebirth? I have heard from other tradition there's a 49-day intermediate state. Yeah, that's a Tibetan tradition. Um, Theravada is pretty strict on saying there's no intermediate state, although there are a few suttas in the early texts that might point towards allowing it. The bottom line is, who the heck knows? That's the bottom line. And the bottom line is, does it really matter? When I've thought about this, it doesn't really matter, does it? I mean, if you're instantly reborn or you hang out for 49 days, you're going to another life anyway based on your karma. Who cares if there's it's like to me it's like this kind of like scholarly debate things. Oh, there's a bardo. There's not a bardo. My Italian grandparents would say like this: I'm gonna give a damn. So when things like this come up in my mind, that's what I hear in my mind. I hear my grandparents saying, I'm gonna give a damn. It doesn't matter to me one bit. It really doesn't. Is it possible? Sure. When people die, if you've had people die around you, like especially close relatives, you might experience some weird things happen. I've had a lot of people die, and I've had weird experiences. And especially after my wife died, like years and years ago, myself and my sister-in-law had some really weird kind of like experiences, almost like, like, hey, I'm still here kind of experiences. And when I think about the bardo, I think about this. Maybe there is this kind of like period. I don't know. Or maybe they're a peta. I have no idea. And it really doesn't impact my practice much. So I don't really, I don't feel the need to dispute either way. Theravada says no. Mahayana says yes. EBTs say maybe. So who knows? Misaka says, I love your imitation of your grandparents. Yeah, I have lots of broken English Italian isms from my grandparents. All right. Kristen. Hello, Kristen. How have you seen others successfully practice from different traditions, e.g., Vajrayana with EBT? There are some Vajrayana teachings that I find hard to accept, guru worship. Is it okay to take some techniques from the Vajrayana tradition and reject that which does not align with all EBT? Sure. Each person's practice is different. And each person kind of goes through I'll give an example of Reed, who, those of you who are on the Discord, known Reed for years. He was a moderator, and probably like the lead admin who helped me run the Maggasekha Discord for like 4 years. Then one day he's like, I'm really into Tibetan Buddhism now, and I'm resigning as a mod. And I'm like, okay, good luck on your journey. I mean, he's still around. I still talk to him here and there, but people have different callings at different points of their practice. I would say I'm probably the weirdo who is somebody who basically started with EBTs and doesn't really feel the need to learn anything but EBTs. I wouldn't use myself as an example for the average person that I've met. I mean, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I did go through like trying to figure out what type of Buddhism I was, but once I found once I found the suttas, there was no going back for me. There's no, I mean, I keep an open mind to maybe learn something from different traditions. And you've heard me talk probably many times, Kristen. You've been with me for a while. You've heard me talk about idiot compassion, right? from the the two wings of the bird, compassion and wisdom, that's from Tibet. And even though it's from Tibetan, and even though maybe the Buddha does not explicitly say that in the suttas, he does say that he is very implicit that this is the case. So even though it's not something you can't see the two wings of the bird sutta, it basically is in line with the early texts. This is not something that's like totally alien from the early text. This is pretty much in line with it, I would say. And that's fine, so this is kind of how I do it, but each person's different. I would never say that you should only judge everything by the early texts. You have to kind of make that decision on your own, if that's something that you're okay with. I would say that, and I know this doesn't really apply to you, Kristen, but for somebody who's new, there are people, you can get into a trap of like just exploring all the different traditions, and like 30 years later you never got anywhere, right? You have to be wary of that. But other than that, I think it's probably not that bad of a thing, to kind of see what you can learn from other traditions. For me personally, I just realized like there's only enough hours in my life. Like, like 5,000 pages of early text is more than I could fully study in a lifetime. So I'm not like, going over here, going over there, listening to these Dhamma talks, listening to that Dhamma talks. Like I found my niche. I found what works for me, what I want to focus on, and that's what I focus on. But I'm open to, if life brings me some teaching from another tradition, then, my mind's open to hear it. I'm just not going to go out searching for it. Hello, Bill. Welcome. Karuna. Perfect. This is a very important thing to understand. Patience with slow progress on the path is a major area I've been struggling with, especially feeling I'm close to something and pushing too hard on retreat. So one of the things that I learned over the years was that I really had no say in when insight and wisdom would arise. Like, I really have no say in how my path progresses. The only say I have is that day to day I'm practicing and developing the Noble Eightfold Path. That's what your say is. Are you putting in the work? What arises from that work and how it arises, when it arises, that's not necessarily up to you. You just have to set the groundwork. And there's going to be plateaus, and there's going to be dips and rises, right? And a lot of that is not up to you. I can remember, going through periods, it's like, aren't I due for an insight? Like, it's been a while since I had this like awesome insight. I want another insight. I got to be due for an insight soon. When am I due for an insight? Now, at this point in my practice, I understand the insights will come when they're ready. Right? When the causes and conditions are there, the insights will arise. So my job is to just to practice, do the work, and whether it's in this lifetime or the next lifetime, the results of that practice arises. This is kind of why I've given up on worrying too much of, well, I'm going to be awakened in this life. Like I can remember a time where I was like zealous. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be awakened in this lifetime, this very lifetime. And there's a part of me that's like, did you become lazy? Is like, did you lose your zeal? But then there's a part of me that understands like, well, actually, I have no say if I can be awakened in this lifetime. I have no idea what my practice was like in past lifetimes and how close could I like basically do nothing but practice all day, every day for the rest of this life and still not be awakened in this life? It's possible, so I don't know. All I know is I should build up my zeal, build up my desire, and keep practicing. Practice as much as I can to the best of my ability, as diligently, sincerely as I can. And the rest is not up to me. That's all I have to do. Just keep practicing. Don't focus on the future. Focus on the practice now, today. Am I doing the best practice I can? Can I refine my practice? Can I develop? Can I enhance my practice? Can I do better? Can I be more energetic in my practice? That's really the best place to focus on. The rest is not up to you. The rest arises as it arises and ceases when it ceases. That's just the way it goes. And you develop the wisdom to understand when you're pushing too hard and when you're not pushing hard enough. So, feeling close to something that might, I wouldn't necessarily say that that's a bad thing to do. If you have the intuition to maybe push a little harder, maybe it's a good thing. That doesn't necessarily mean that those results will happen in that retreat. As I like to say, maybe 4 months from now, you're waiting online in a store, and then the insight comes and smacks you in the face, right? You pushed hard in a retreat. That's good. That the wisdom and insight will arise from that. When? It's not up to you. Don't expect that just because you go to a retreat that you'll get, you'll always come out of a retreat with wisdom and insight, that it'll always be you'll always be happy at the end of the retreat or anything like that. You can't assume that. You don't know. You don't know what will arise during the retreat. But you can know that if you practice diligently, you do your best, you are progressing on the path, and you have created karma that will ripen in the future. So. Let's see here. Anything on how to treat well those who you perceive to have ill intentions? If I see someone has bad intentions, it's difficult for me to treat them nicely since they are not being nice themselves. Like if someone is being dishonest, is there only to cause trouble and such? Oh, okay. This was before. So, to be quite honest with you, you could call them out. You can be strict. You can be straightforward with somebody. You can be, I would say, quite brutal with somebody, but doing it in a very skillful way, right? You don't have to be angry about it. You can have goodwill for them, but you say, hey, listen, this is, this is a lie. This is what you're doing. I see what you're doing. Yada, 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 yada. Right? You just call it out. And you do so in a very calm, skillful way. Well, that might get them agitated. They might be so surprised that they're just like dumbfounded, like they don't know how to react. Right? Especially if you're not escalating the situation, right? Because you're not angry, you're not acting out of anger, you're not kind of trying to poke them. You're just saying straightforwardly, without any emotion, this is what's happening. I don't appreciate this. I'm not accepting this. And if this doesn't change or whatever, see you later. I'm not going to sit here and be berated. You can, that's not an easy thing to do. That's something that you have to kind of either be trained by in life, or practice a lot. Because, I would have said that I'm not good at that. But the job that I had kind of had to teach me how to do it. And it's funny because I could be like that with somebody inside, like I feel really bad. Like I feel like maybe I'm being too mean or like maybe I'm the one in the wrong, right? How many times have people like treated me badly and I feel like I did something wrong, right? But I had to realize, like, wait a second. Chris, X, Y, Z. No. I'm right in this. Don't feel bad. You didn't do anything wrong. Like I have to tell myself, you didn't do anything wrong. You are right in this. You have examined yourself. Don't let you be manipulated in this way, right? Because I'm a good-hearted, agreeable person, I can be very easily manipulated by somebody who's disagreeable, who can push. And so I have to say, okay, no, I'm standing firm. I'm in the right. I'm standing firm. I'm going to try to deal with this situation in the most skillful way that I can. And of course, you're not going to deal with it 100% skillfully, but it's good training for sure. If you feel like it's hard to tell somebody's intentions, but if you call somebody out and they understand and they realize that you're like, oh no, I'm sorry, no, I really do have the best intentions, that can, if they really have good intentions, that can usually lead to clarification and discussion. If not, then maybe they do have ill intentions, and maybe your best bet is to set your boundaries, get out, disengage, right? You don't accept it. Just like the Buddha doesn't accept the gift of from the berating Brahmin. Hello, Anna. Welcome. I did some drawing of Mara's army a long time ago. One was an evil cuddle bear. He's so soft and brings lots of snuggly blankets. Yeah. Well, just like all those horror movies with evil cuddle bears and dolls, and say, Mara doesn't necessarily use grotesque, right? This is like the simile, the anger-eating demon, right? The real anger-eating demon from, I think it's SN 2222, Ugly, where the demon sits on Sokka's throne, the Devas, and the Devas are how dare this Yaka sit on the great Sokka's throne? And the more they insulted him, the Ajahn Brahm, when he tells the story, and I've also heard other monks tell the story this way, that when they tell the story, the more they throw insults at him, the more gruesome and large and powerful he gets. But in the suttas, it's the reverse. The more they throw insults and anger at him, the more good looking he becomes. the more beautiful, right? So he turns into this, you know, you have to be careful. Sometimes evil does come in cuddly or pleasant looking packages. Misaka says, the excuses I tell myself to maintain bad behaviors are shameless. Yeah. Well, that's why Hiri and Otapa are so important, right? That's why seeing that and calling it out is so important. What did the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis do in the Tari and Taragatas? I see you, Mara. And then Mara, being seen, goes away dejected. But what they don't tell you in the sutras is that 10 minutes later, he comes from another angle. He's a relentless general. He's a relentless attacker. But the more you can see him, the better. And if you're being diligent and you're recognizing this, then you don't need to be too shame. You don't have to have too much shame. You could say, hey, I'm doing the best that I can. I see Mara as much as I can. I'm going to try to be better and see him more. See the attacks coming a mile away. This is very important. I see this in myself all the time, right? Mara will use honest justifications. So you have to be very clear in your mind. Are you doing this because you really need to? Or is it because of your craving, right? This is a very good example. I have to have candy for my blood sugar or my blood sugar will drop and I will pass out. There is a legitimate medical issue there. Mara is shameless. Mara will use that legitimate medical issue for you to go further than that. So this is why you have to be careful. This is, I've used this with food a lot. Like, okay, I should have this, and I have to think: is this craving, or is it because I really sincerely need it? Right? You have to, and sometimes it's very blurred. So sometimes you actually make a decision, and it's kind of mixed. Maybe it's craving, maybe it's not. You can't really see it clearly. But at least being able to recognize that, to see that, is very important step, right? To see, Mara will use all the ammunition at his disposal, even if it seemed, even especially if it's more legitimate, because that's the Trojan horse. That's the Trojan horse. Right? The Trojan horse is, look, oh, this is good. You need this. But Mara is hiding inside the horse. And once you bring the horse in the gates, Mara comes out with his army and kills everybody. You have to be careful of that. I'm attracted to the purity of my practice. If you really knew my practice, you wouldn't be so attracted to it. Dedication, yes. Even when I fail, I'm still trying to do my best. So dedication, yeah. But the only purity is for the awakened ones. But yeah, I thank you. Bante, if you're open to sharing this with us, what is your favorite part of the monastic life, being a monk? Um, there's a couple parts. I really like, although it's rare these days, I like being able to kind of be by myself. Like right now, like I'm experiencing something I haven't experienced in a lot. Like, oh well, I no, since June, the month of June, when I babysat for Aya Sudama in Charlotte, I was able to experience this. But it's actually rare for me to be in a place where most of the day I'm by myself. Like here, I see some Indonesian people, they come and they bring me my one meal for the day. And the rest of the day I'm by myself. I really like that. I need that. I like that. That's something that I can enjoy for long, long periods. So being able to have that is a good part of being a monk that I like. Although, like I say, these days it's quite rare. And once I start building up Maggasekha, like in person, it's going to be even more rare. But I'll take it where I can get it. Um, the other aspect of what I love, my favorite part of being a monk is sharing the Dhamma with people. I think it's probably the most meaningful job I've ever had. I've done a lot of meaningful good things in my life, but this is the best. This is without a doubt the best job I've ever had. It's the thing I love to do. I mean, yes, just like any job, there's just some days like, okay, I got to get on this stream. It's not some days I would rather not, but you know, it is what it is. But still in general, and especially when it's in person. In person, I love sharing the Dhamma the most. On stream, it's okay. Um, but there's just an energy, like I'm an energy vampire when I'm around people sharing the Dhamma. I just, get like Super Saiyan energy from the people I'm there with. And I crash afterwards, but while I'm there, the energy is palpable. So yeah, I guess I kind of have this dynamic, and this is a dynamic that I've talked about since my early days of being a monk. There's a part of me that wants to be in a cave and away from everybody, and there's a part of me that wants to be traveling and sharing the Dhamma. And so for me, it's about finding a balance between the two. Finding about and I think that's in line with how the Buddha set up the monks to be in the early, in ancient India. Having that time every day where you're with lay people, and then the time every day when you're, you know, secluded for the day's abiding. Having that balance is important. Bill Stewart says, listening to you and from my experience, it seems that life is predetermined. What are the Buddhist thoughts on predetermination? No such thing. There's no such thing that's predetermined. Um, it's all about dependent origination and karma. It might seem like it's predetermined, but it's simply the groundwork. It's simply the causes and conditions that you set either earlier in this life or previous lives that are arising. Right. So it's not predetermined by some external force or unchangeable, etc. What you have power over is how you choose to act right now. Right. Just like in the simile of the mountains. When the mountains are closing in, what do you do? Well, the answer is practice Dhamma and do good deeds. That's always the answer, right? So it's not that it's not like you're powerless and predetermined, because then there would be no point. There'd be no point in doing the path. The Buddha says this in many ways. It's like, if such and such were true, there could be no path. If things were predetermined, there's no noble eightfold path. How could you? How could you affect some kind of change if things are predetermined? So no, there's no predetermination in Buddhism. At least not in the early texts. I can't speak to other traditions. Oh, okay. That's talking about in dealing with other people. Yeah. Well, that also happens sometimes with Mara. Sometimes you call Mara out, Mara gets agitated. It's about how the words you use and how you do it. You don't have to, you're not saying it in a way that's like you this and you that and you that. You know, you can use words skillfully. You can say like this conversation, it's like using words in a way that are not necessarily um, making the person feel like they're attacked, which which can escalate, which can make them more hostile. This is true. Um, Sometimes the only thing to do is to disengage, hit the eject button, and get out of there. Sister Sunny Free Spirit. Dear Bante, is warm hearted compassion the answer to every situation? No. No. It's not the answer to most situations. Wisdom is the answer to every situation. Mindfulness is the answer to every situation. And when you have wisdom and mindfulness, then compassion can be used skillfully. But wisdom and mindfulness is the answer to every situation. Everything else is secondary. All right. Oh, hello, Malika. Hello down under. Hope all is well. Good seeing you. Jay says it's 11:22. Samyutta Nikaya 11:22. Thank you. Not 20. I knew at least half of that was right. Not 22:22. 11:22. Hello, Manel. Welcome. Rick says, Bante, what are skillful ways to let go of the conceit of not feeling good enough, no matter how much or how well we do? So, Rick, um, assuming I because I've known you for a long time, this can be met in a couple different ways. But I'm assuming when you mean not feeling good enough, you're not talking about physically, right? You're talking about like self-worth wise, like I'm not good enough kind of a thing. So tell me if that's not what I'm tell me if I haven't thought that, but I'm going to answer the question with that assumption. So this is something that takes some work really to build up. Hello, Michelle. Welcome. It takes some work to build up the understanding, the balanced understanding that you're not perfect and that's okay, but you're trying your best. If you are indeed trying your best, if you are, then you can understand, like, you know, If you're not, then maybe there's a part of you that's saying, well, maybe you should be trying your best. But most, most people, we kind of use judge ourselves by kind of uh, traditional human standards or cultural standards and all these kind of standards, and or we will kind of judge ourselves by people who have achieved higher ideals, which is not good either. It's like, like, oh man, I'm so horrible. I'm not like Sariputta yet. It's like, this is, well, duh. It's like, of course you're not like Sariputta. So I think a lot of not feeling good enough stems from misperceptions and comparisons. The only person that you should, this is not a Buddhist saying, but it's a great saying. It's like the only person you should compare yourself to is yourself yesterday, right? You see this in like sports and like um, self-development circles. I think that's a good statement. All right, it's a very Buddhist statement too. All right, how have you progressed since yesterday? Not judging yourself by, you went to a retreat and everybody else around you looks like they're so much better meditators, or the person on this screen seems like such a better person, or any of these things. Reflecting on that you are a being in samsara, and just like any other being in samsara, you're all in the same boat. We're all siblings in suffering. Any comparison is just, like you say, conceit, right? The Buddha says there's three conceits: I'm greater than, I'm less than, I'm equal to. If you are comparing or judging, you are doing so from the basis of I am, from the basis of I exist. I think, therefore I am. That's all. Suffering stems from there. So whether you are good enough to other people doesn't really matter, especially if you're, older person. I mean, like, not like, it's maybe a little tougher when you're a teenager and you have parents or society, like, school or whatever is judging you on certain things. But once you're a person out in society, you find your self-worth within yourself. Nobody else can really give you your self-worth. Place your worth within yourself and know you have worth. No other person has more worth than you. You all have the same worth of being a being in samsara. Everything else is secondary. Jealousy is a weirdly good motivator in the short term, even with Dhamma. Yeah, like you say, in the short term. How many short-term actions do we do that cause us more suffering in the long term? That's the problem. And one of the problems is that we as human beings are not really good at looking at things in the long term. we're not really trained for it in our mind's not built for that. It's not an easy thing for us to do, to really think long term. Some few of us, a small percentage of humans born with different brains, different things or whatever, um, may be able to do so, but otherwise it's quite hard. All right. Well, we have come to the end of our chat. Why don't we do at least a short meditation? I like to, at least, even if it's only 10 minutes, I like to have some level of meditation in every Dhammapalooza. This was a very heavy question Dhammapalooza, and that's perfectly fine. Big Q&A. So we'll do maybe 10 minutes, and then we'll close out after that. Now, won't be doing any guided. We'll just sit together for 10 minutes. Most of you here have probably heard my guided meditations 18,000 times anyway. You know how to practice. Slowly open your eyes, becoming aware of the room around you and your body's position in it. Reflecting on the meditation you just had. We'll read some Dhammapada. The Buddha. By what track can you trace the trackless Buddha of limitless range, whose victory nothing can undo, whom none of the vanquished defilements can ever pursue? By what track can you trace the trackless Buddha of limitless range, in whom exists no longer the entangling, embroiling craving that perpetuates becoming? Those wise ones who are devoted to meditation and who delight in the calm of renunciation, such mindful ones, supreme Buddhas, even the gods hold dear. Hard it is to be born a man. Hard is the life of mortals. Hard it is to gain the opportunity of hearing the sublime truth. And hard to encounter is the arising of the Buddhas. To avoid all evil, cultivate good, and cleanse the mind. This is the teaching of all the Buddha. Endurance, enduring patience. This is the line I just chanted before. Enduring patience is the highest austerity. Nibbana is supreme, said the Buddhas. He is not a true monk who harms others, nor a true renunciate who oppresses others. Not despising, not harming, restrained according to the moral code, moderating in food, dwelling in solitude, devotion to meditation. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. There is no satisfying sensual desires, even with a rain of gold coins, for sensual pleasures give little satisfaction and much pain. Having understood this, the wise man finds no delight even in heavenly pleasures. The disciple of the Supreme Buddha delights in the destruction of craving. Driven only by fear, do men go for refuge to many places, to hills, woods, groves, trees, and shrines. Those of you who do the morning chanting with me, you've heard this many times. Such indeed is no safe refuge. Such is not the refuge supreme. Not by resorting to such a refuge is one released from all suffering. He who has gone for a refuge to the Buddha, the teaching, and his order, penetrates with transcendental wisdom the Four Noble Truths: suffering, the causing of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the Noble Eightfold Path that leads to the cessation of suffering. This indeed is the safe refuge. This is the refuge supreme. Having gone to such a refuge, one is released from all suffering. Hard to find is the thoroughbred man, the Buddha. He is not born anywhere. He is not born everywhere. Where such a wise man is born, the clan thrives happily. Blessed is the birth of the Buddhas. Blessed is the enunciation of the sacred teaching. Blessed is the harmony of the order. And blessed is the spiritual pursuit of the united truth seeker. He who reveres those worthy of reverence, the Buddha and their disciples, who have transcended all obstacles and passed beyond the reach of sorrow and lamentation, he who reveres such peaceful and fearless ones, his merit none can compute by any measure. All right. Oh, Rick says he grew up in a toxic family system. Yes. Yeah. And you do not have to hold on to that poor traumatized child anymore. Right? That part of that most of that child is gone. A good chunk of that child is still there. The trauma is still there. But the child is gone. You can let go of that with practice and help. Keep practicing, Rick. You'll get there. All right, friends. Let's do our closing business, and we'll call it a night. This. All right, friends. So if this is your first time watching this stream and you'd like to find out more information and be kept informed about what's going on with myself and Maggasekha, you can go to the website listed on the screen, maggasekha.org, maggasekha.org. That is my headquarters. Everything I do, from all the media, new videos, retreats, articles, my travels, I post everything on there. So on the top right in that website, you can put your email in, you can click the button, and then every time I post something new on the website, you'll get an email. Same thing on YouTube. You can click subscribe, click the button, click the bell, and every time there's a new video or a new live stream, you will be notified. We also have the Maggasekha Discord community. This is a community that we've been going on now for about 8 years. It's a community that is based in the early Buddhist texts, the suttas, both in study and in practice. This is a community that practices together, studies together, learns the suttas, and discusses Buddhist life, Buddhist practice. So if this sounds like something that you might be interested in checking out, you can send an email to the email below, maggasekha@gmail.com, ask for an invite, and we'll get you a link. So in terms of regular events, we have, when we can, all events are subject to me being able to do them in terms of being in locations that don't have conflicting schedules, or if I'm not traveling, etc. And so usually Mondays at 7 p.m. New York time, we have our Dhammapalooza that we're finishing up. Monday through Friday in the morning at 8 a.m. And so in about little more than 11 hours, I'll be back live streaming again, doing morning monastery experience, which is a half-hour session that emulates a morning session at a monastery. So there's some chanting, some precepts, some Dhamma learning, a little Dhamma talk, reading suttas, etc. So you're welcome to join us 8 a.m. Monday through Friday in doing this practice. Also Saturdays, if you're on Insight Timer program, Saturdays I do a session on Insight Timer, 3 p.m. New York time for an hour and a half, guided meditation, Dhamma talk, and Q&A. And Sunday nights on the Discord, we as a community come together and we read suttas together, as we have been doing for almost 8 years. We've gone through many thousands of pages of suttas in that time. We'll continue. We have many more years still before we finish all of the Nikayas. Hopefully we will get there. All right. Let's share screen. Oh wait, yeah. Okay, so that's business. That's good enough. And now we'll share our merits and call it a night. Dukkha patta chane dukkha, bhaya patta chane bhaya, sokha patta chane sokha, hantu sabbe pipaniyo, etavata chamehi sampatang punya sampatang, sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti sittiya, Akasatta Chabumata Devanaga Mahiddika Punyang Tam Nanumoditva Charang Rakantu Sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit of ours that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, friends. That's the end of another Dhammapalooza. Suki Hotu, may you be well and at ease. Practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again, which might be tomorrow morning or might be next week. See you in another stream. Have a good week.